Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dirty Martini. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're having an amazing day. Guys, I have a terrible head splitting migraine and I don't know how I'm going to pull through this episode, but let's just figure it out. Like, I know you're probably thinking, why don't you just rest? Why don't you just take a pill? Well, I'm not going to take a pill because I am the type of person who loves to see how long I can raw dog my pain, especially when I'm on my period and I'm in excruciating pain, a pain to a level which prevents me from functioning well as a human, and I'm just curled up in a fetus position in my bed and just cannot stand or get up or just breathe. I still don't take any painkillers, and I don't know why I do this. I feel like it also brings me some sense of accomplishment or boosts my ego and makes me feel some like better knowing that I can pull through the pain. And honestly, I don't know why I do this because no one is going to give me a medal for experiencing the pain and not helping myself relieve the tension. But still, here I am with the migraine, which I think is very much guys, by the way, the I wanted to get home because I literally just got home from a very, very long day, and I was planning on just going directly to bed and sleeping in because I managed to squeeze every single thing I had to do in the next 2 days into today so that tomorrow I can sleep in for the first time in God knows how long. And I feel like I'm so not used to sleeping in that I'm just unable, like biologically, my clock is set as an alarm for 7:30. But I wanted to rest. I really did. But then I saw that Taylor and Travis are engaged. And I don't know why, but I just was overcome by this sense of excitement despite really don't knowing those people. I feel a bit parasocial through her art about Taylor Swift. So she's engaged. She's engaged to Travis. I was about to say Travis Scott, Travis Kelsey, and good for them. Congratulations. I wish you a very happy and filled with love life. And I just couldn't help but think about how when you know, and I couldn't help but think about the butterfly effect and how every single decision we take today might affect our life forever. And it's just crazy to me that this guy went to see her perform at a stadium that he plays at, like he's a football player. He saw her perform. He made a friendship bracelet with his number on it because he wanted to reach out and link up with her. But that wasn't successful and he couldn't give her the bracelet. And if you've watched the New Heights episode with Taylor Swift, he couldn't even get backstage to talk to her despite really feeling like he was entitled to. And then he decided to speak up about this on his podcast, and the video went viral, and this is what caught her attention. And it's just crazy to me how, like, the invisible string tying you to me, it's just crazy how everything and everyone is always connected, and how the little things that we might really not put so much thought into that we do on the daily can be world defining and they shape our existence. And it's just crazy to me how people get to meet each other and just, if it's meant to be, it will be. And yeah, I'm just happy for them, good for them. Yeah, again, I wish them a very long and healthy and happy life ahead of them. But this really got me excited because obviously, as someone who's quite connected to her music and a big portion of her art is centered around love and the type of love she has experienced and wants to experience and feel like she has the right to experience. And it's just nice because, parasocially, I feel connected to her through her art, and because I resonate a lot with some of her lyrics. And it's like a friend getting engaged. Also, I'm at this age where if any of my friends or people around me my age told me that they're pregnant or that they're getting married, or I don't know how to react. And that's why the other day I was hanging out with a friend and she was telling me about how her housemate, who is an year older than me, is pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, no way, what is she going to do? And she was like, well, she is going to have the baby and she's going to be a mother. And it's just crazy to me that we have reached a point of life where we can consciously and willingly not only become adults, but become parents. And it's just crazy to me because in my head, I'm still a child. And it's also quite difficult for me to comprehend the passage of time and when it comes to people and life in Bulgaria. Because for me, life in Bulgaria was more or less put at a pause when I left the country to go study abroad. And sure, I come and visit quite often, and I spend a prolonged period of time over the summer here. So I am not detached from my life here, but because I'm not here to witness it every single day, I just feel like when I come back here, things are supposed to be the way they used to be 5 years ago, and that is just not the case because now this is something I struggle with quite a lot, just coping with the fact that life here does not stop once I leave, because I really struggled when I first started noticing my parents aging, which is such a blessing, and I feel so privileged, and I'm so incredibly thankful that I get the chance to witness my parents aging. But I just remember when I first came back for Christmas in 2021 and I hadn't seen my parents for 4 months, which is the longest I had gone at that point of my life without seeing my parents. And I just saw a few gray hairs here, a few more wrinkles there, and I just started sobbing like a baby uncontrollably, because this is when I was hit in the face with reality that despite my absence here, life goes on. And sure, my life here may be paused and it may not be happening, my life here, but my absence, while it may affect other people's lives, it does not put a full stop to their existence, which it shouldn't be. I should not be anyone's center of existence but mine. It's just crazy the first time you grasp the concept that life continues even if you're not there to witness it. So, I don't know how I got here from Taylor Swift getting married, well, engaged, but yeah. Actually, I was talking about my period pain and how I raw dog the pain. I honestly sometimes have no idea, and it's so difficult for me to just follow my train of thought. I genuinely should just start writing down stuff and create some sort of a structure for the episodes, because this sometimes is really, really hard to continue. But doesn't matter. So I have a splitting headache, and I think I'm figuring out why I have that splitting headache. And it's because I, for the past, well, 8 months in total, but it's been quite heightened over the past few weeks. I've been under constant stress. And I think people always say, oh, I'm stressed out, I'm burned out, I'm overwhelmed. And it's become so common for us to say those stuff that we've come to take them for granted and not really comprehend the weight that they carry. And this is something I talked about with a friend a few hours ago, how stress genuinely affects every single part and aspect of our well being, be it physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. Stress is all consuming and it's so incredibly and unjustifiably understated and undermined and undervalued because it's just ignored. Because I feel like the way life, the way the world is set up right now, with all its rapid nature, with its chaotic nature, if you will, we're so used to stress always being such a constant factor in our day to day life that we have come to see it as something so normal, or maybe we just have normalized living in stressful environments, creating stressful environments, nurturing stressful environments, and just not allowing ourselves to leave stressful environments, that we undermine how significant and impactful stress is in everything we do, in everything we feel, in on everything we are. And the stress I've been going through is because I am filled with this dread of what's to come. And I know I touched upon this in the last episode, so I'm not going to talk about this in detail, but I am just very, very worried about the next academic year because I really don't want last academic year to repeat itself, because this last academic year I experienced was just something I wouldn't wish upon anyone, despite, me recognizing that going abroad, getting my higher education is a privilege. I was just very, very stressed. Many times self imposed stress, many times externally imposed on me stress. I was just like those pressure cookers. I was just on the verge of breaking down or exploding at all times. And because I don't want this for myself, I feel like I deserve more than just constantly being outside of my comfort zone, but not in a way that's fruitful to my growth, but in a way that's uncomfortable and in a way that initiates self deprecation and self destruction. And I just have been filled with this dread. And my mom is like, every single year before you leave for the Netherlands, you become so stressful and stressed and just you like I'm basically transparent in this with how stressful and under stress I am. And by transparent, I don't mean that I am upfront and honest about it, because I feel like I ignore it so much, because I feel like if I ignore it, it's either going to go away or I'm just going to forget that it's there. I mean transparent that in the way that you can see it on my face. You can just by the vibe I bring to the function, you can tell that I'm stressed. And I have been unable to sleep. For the past few weeks, I've slept 5.5 hours at most during a single continuous sleeping session. And the thing is, my sleeping duration is not continuous. I wake up multiple times per night, and it's just really, really not a way for me to feel well rested, because I'm just unable to ease myself up enough to rest. And the way I finally decided and recognized that my stress is not something to take lightly and it's something that's really affecting me is when a few days ago, so I was going to this one apartment where I grew up, and I went there with two of my best friends, and we we were talking, and as we were leaving, obviously I go to lock the door, and we're talking, and I'm so distracted, and I'm so there but not there. I cannot really explain it. And I just leave and I come home, which is a 20-ish, 25-minute drive. So I know that if you're someone who lives in a very big city, this is an easy peasy walk around the block for you. But where I come from, a 20 to 25-minute drive is a pretty solid drive and quite far away. And I just, through the entire ride back home, I was like, did I lock the door? But I was like, yeah, obviously I locked the door. It's okay. And my keys are here. So I must have locked the door. But I just didn't believe myself. I didn't trust myself. So because I just could not remember. Because as much as I was emotionally, physically, and mentally present, I just wasn't. Because I I feel like the way stress has been affecting me, it's affecting my short-term memory retention and turning it into memory loss. When I drive, sometimes I don't remember how I got home. And now with this, with me locking and closing the door, I called my friends and I was like, hey, you saw me lock the door, right? And they were like, yeah, that's why you were a bit behind us because you stayed a little bit until you locked the door. But I believed them and I calmed down for a little bit, but then I just couldn't. And I asked my mom to call one of our neighbors for her to go downstairs to our floor and check if the door is closed, because I just started convincing myself that the door was wide open and just an open invitation for robbers, knock on wood. And our neighbor was not in Bulgaria, so she obviously couldn't check. And I just started spiraling. And this is a pretty funny story, but I think it's quite telling of the mental and emotional state I'm in right now and the things I'm going through, because I was getting ready for bed. It was midnight, and for 2 hours, I just could not calm down. My resting heart rate is 60, and as I was trying to calm myself down, as I was getting ready for bed, as I was laying on my pillow, my heart rate was 90 plus, which is really not ideal considering that my resting heart rate is 60. And I just started spiraling and I started seeing such vivid images in my brain of how I have not locked the apartment and how we are fully just someone went inside and took everything and it's all my fault, and how the police is going to get involved, and how am I going to make up for all the memories we've made in that apartment with everything gone. And it was 2 a.m. and I just did that 20-25 minute drive to go and double check if I had closed the door and if I had locked. And as you can probably imagine, I had done this. This also, I had witnesses who confirmed that I had done this, but I just didn't trust myself. So I went there and I checked, and this was one of the most stressful rides I have had in my entire life, drives, not rides, because the closer I was getting to the apartment, the more convinced I was that I had really messed up. And when I went there and I saw that everything was intact and I had indeed closed, and actually I had triple locked, despite all of this, I couldn't calm down. And I took a video of me locking the door. And when I got in my car, which was quite literally a minute and a half later, I was like, did I lock the door? Also, if I lock the door, did I leave the keys in the door? And I just had to go and check on the video. And despite seeing the video and despite me explaining what I do, I just didn't trust myself. And when I got home and I was starting to re get ready for bed, like get ready for bed again, I just could not calm down. And I started doing some medication and some breathing work because I just could not shake off the stress. And the stress is preventing me from resting. And that's why I've been unable to sleep. I don't eat well. I barely drink any water. I feel like I'm surviving on photosynthesis. And that's why I have the severe, terrible headache right now. And today, for example, I also went to the cinema. And as I was watching the movie, and I was watching The Materialist, I'll tell you in a little bit about it. As I was watching the movie, and I had parked my car outside of the cinema, I had just my brain created this very vivid image, a very convincing image that I hadn't locked the doors of the car. And not only that, but that I had left the key in the car and that my car was going to get stolen. And it's just in moments like these, I get consumed by sheer panic and I just feel trapped because I feel like there's nothing for me to do and nothing I can do to prevent it. And I Googled, so obviously it must be true, and obviously it's a way to self diagnose. I know that this could be a sign of OCD, but I genuinely think, and I've never been tested for OCD, I don't know if I have it or not, but I genuinely think that this is the result of stress. And stress affects me in very interesting ways compared to, for example, the way it affects my friends. And the friend I was talking about stress with, like 2 hours ago or something like this, he was telling me how he loses weight and struggles to gain weight. And I'm quite the opposite because I feel like because of stress, I mean, I have lost weight once because of stress, but more often than not, I gain weight because I feel like I start retaining water, but I also start binging. And I'm really, really bad because I don't eat for breakfast anything most of the times because I just don't have the habit of eating breakfast because ever since I was a child, I saw breakfast as, that's 20 minutes extra sleep, which is such an unhealthy way to approach the situation. So really, really, please don't do this. Have your breakfast. It's important because it's in the name, it breaks the fast of the night. So it's crucial for your body to get some fuel in that you're going to need for the entirety of the day. Then over lunch, I sometimes eat, sometimes I don't, because if I get hungry and I don't tend to my hunger in 30 minutes to an hour, I'm just not hungry anymore. And then evening comes and I start binging. And when I say evening, I mean night, because we all know that I am a night owl and I just start eating dinner at 1 or 2 a.m. and then I just go to bed, and it's all because of stress and I just cannot sleep there because I'm so preoccupied with this and that and this and that and that person and this situation, and it's poisonous and it's not it's not sustaining, it's not sustainable. And I really, really am filled with dread that this is what's going to happen to me from next week on. And because I know how low I was feeling when I was experiencing this for a prolonged period of time, I am just filled with this panic and anxiety that this is going to repeat itself, that history is just going to, that just tomorrow is going to be a continuation of the yesterday, leaving the today somewhere in the middle, unlived and unexperienced. And I'm just very, very scared. And I hope this doesn't happen to me, because I'm trying to convince myself that no amount of anxiety is going to change the situation. And I can just let myself breathe and let myself live, and I can let myself make mistakes, and I can let myself just be human. But I don't know why I struggle so much with doing that. And so when I stress, I gain weight. But I also remember 2 years ago when I was working at this one restaurant, and it was an absolutely terrible experience on every single line of existence, apart from the fact that I met 2 or 3 nice girls that I sometimes keep in touch with. In general, it was a terrible experience. It was my first job in the Netherlands. And I remember I was so stressed because of work. I dreaded going to work. Now, sure, I know I complain about work every now and then, but that's the thing. Now I don't dread going to work, which I know it should be the bare minimum, but it's a big advantage for me right now, because I remember when I was working at the restaurant, I would just, let's say it was Monday and I was scheduled to work on Wednesday, I would not be able to breathe normally through Monday and Tuesday, knowing that I have to go to work on Wednesday and see those people, serve those customers, be supervised by those supervisors, and just be situated in this toxic environment. And I just remember at the end, before I quit, and honestly, thank God for the UK and the exchange I did there, because it was the sole reason I quit. Because I I feel like I was so deep into the matrix and in the everyday, and just fueled by inertia, that I would have just kept on going no matter how much I hated everything about it back then and there. And I just remember at the end, I saw gray hairs on my head, and I was 20, and my face was filled with wrinkles. I had gained weight. I couldn't sleep. I also remember, and this I guess was a coping mechanism then. I don't recommend it to anyone, but I remember that at a certain point, waiting on those people there got so stressful, because my supervisors were super strict, and I genuinely felt like I was a target of to be the most strict to, and I was held to standards that most people were not held to. And I just remember the last few weeks, I would ask the bartenders to make me a cocktail or give me a shot, and just so I could survive my shift. And I hate that this was my coping mechanism. And I really hope I listened to my body, because my body was telling me that I was not doing well in that environment. And I hope I listened to my body, and I hope to tend to it, and I hope I never ignore it again, because even if I refuse to acknowledge something mentally and emotionally, my body will physically always show me the signs. So now, the stress I'm experiencing, I feel like it's been so continuous, and it's been exponentially growing over the past few weeks, with my moving back to the Netherlands coming closer and closer. And I just hope I can manage. But I just also don't think it's purely about management and survival. I think it's about minimizing the stress to a level that it's not defining or shaping your existence and life, and you just let work be work and don't let it infiltrate your life after you clock out. This is something I struggle with quite a lot. I also am in a way forced to struggle with quite a lot because, for example, some of my colleagues, they feel like they are quite distant from my boss hierarchically, which is not true because she has said it from the very first day that we're all leveled, and I feel like I can reach out to her. But because, and not to sound cocky, I'm quite competent at my job, people reach out to me during my free time. And for example, I'm in Bulgaria and I've had my colleagues call me to ask me something about work, and that's why I just struggle to create the boundary between professional and personal life, because during my personal life, I should also be available to be professional. And that's something, at the very least, I'm not being financially compensated for. And that's why, as uncomfortable as it has been, I have forced myself to say no. And it's nothing personal. It because I always want to help people and ease their sorrows, ease their pain, make their problems go away. I always have been willing to take on more load so that the other person can have it easy. But this has been quite self-destructive and it's another source of stress. So I've, as uncomfortable as it has been, I forced myself to say no multiple times, or I've said, you can reach out to the boss. I don't know. I really, it's just, at least if I was getting compensated for it, that would be something else. And I would justify people calling me on a Sunday evening, knowing that I'm not even in the country. Yeah, but that's just really not the case. And I feel like I should start practicing more mindfulness and just learn better ways to cope with stress and not let it so deeply into my life and into my mind. And I should try to build a wall between me and stress and charge it for entry, because who the hell is stress that it thinks it's entitled to entering my life without even paying rent? Because the amount of time I spent stressing out, stress should be paying me for marketing it so well. But anyways, enough about this. So The Materialist, guys, this is a movie I wanted to see ever since it was announced, because obviously the cast is amazing. The the three main leads are Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal. And oh my god, I feel like it's obviously, if you've seen the movie, um, you know what I'm going to talk about. If you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, I guess, but also that movie came out like what, 2 months ago. It was just released in Bulgaria rather soon. I would say it was a week and a half ago, if not even just a week ago, because the thing is, distributors work differently and on different contracts with different countries, different cinemas. So that's why a certain movie can air in the Netherlands in June and it can air in Bulgaria late August. And this, I really, one of the more interesting cases that I personally experienced this year was We Live in Time, because it was released in the UK last year, but it only became available in the Netherlands this year. So it's quite interesting. And I think cinema and just in general movie distribution is such a fascinating and well calculated science, basically, because I remember when I was in my cinema and movie related courses in my bachelor, they explained it to us like this: distribution is one of the key aspects of movie production, and it is the aspect that gets the product to the consumer, hence its importance. And timing is everything, and placement as well. And they explained it to us like this. And you can notice this now when I point it out to you. Maybe you can start noticing it and you see that I am right. You probably notice that the biggest movies of the years, the biggest blockbusters, the most anticipated movies when it comes to audiences looking forward to watching a movie, and something that's been teased for so long, that type of movies, they're released either in the summer or around the Christmas holidays. And the reason for that is very, very simple. It's super obvious, but to me personally, it wasn't obvious until it was pointed out to me. So the reason movies are distributed and released during those days is because, let's say, summer, people are going out more. People are socializing more, and also university students and high school students and middle school students and just students in general, they're off of school, and most of them, the ones who study abroad or study just not in their hometown, they are coming back to their families if they have the privilege to. And if they're spending more time with their families, they're going to look for an activity that is quality time outside of the house, something entertaining and something that is just enriching in one way or another. And because media in many ways, and movies in particular, and the cinema as an industry in particular, is such a social industry, and an industry that can either bring people together or tear them apart. But the purpose is to bring people together to go somewhere and experience media content together. Because the way we experience media content nowadays is there is a lot of privatization of media consumption because of personal computers, laptops, smartphones, tablets, and headphones and everything. We're so isolated in our media consumption that watching a movie together with someone is now not the norm, but it's an event. And that is why it would be considered quality time, because it's something out of the status quo that we experience nowadays. And because of the summer and people going out, people coming back home, people just the days being longer, and people wanting to embrace life more than they would over Christmas, for example, when days are shorter. That's why the biggest blockbusters of the year are released in summer. And the same applies for Christmas, because again, families more often than not are spending the holidays together, and they're looking for a way to get out of the house, because to create something eventful, to create a memory outside of the house. And that's why also movies are released around the Christmas holidays, because it's all about knowing how, when, and to whom to promote your content to elicit the most consumption as possible. And I think movie distribution is so fascinating. And for example, now we see The Materialist was released in the Netherlands in June or July. I believe it was July. I don't know. And in my local cinema there where I live, it was created as an event. It was an like a movie night with this movie with drinks and snacks, and it was a whole thing. It's an event, and it's something you would want to visit, hence its positioning during summer. But the movie was distributed in Bulgaria mid to late August, and I think this is fascinating, and this is even more relevant and pressing when it comes to movie distribution and TV show distribution on streaming platforms, because streaming platforms, more, I would say more than not, are global platforms. I would assume not every single country maybe has access to Netflix or HBO or Amazon Prime or Hulu or any other streaming platform. But the ones they do, they need to be in negotiation with licensing a movie or a TV show or any content that they're trying to make available to their audiences on the platform. And I just think this is where movie distribution is quite prominent, crucial, and very, very urgent in its decision making. And I think it's fascinating how, for example, the Netflix content I have available to me in the Netherlands is nowhere near, like, it has nothing in common with the Netflix content I have in Bulgaria. And I am just fascinated by this, and I think it's just so interesting. So sorry for this nerd out, crash out rant, but I just find it fascinating. So The Materialist, if you have seen the movie, you probably can also come to the conclusion that this is not an unpredictable movie. This is not a movie that is going to change lives or alter the universe or make the world better or win an Oscar. Who knows? But it's not a movie I couldn't have gone without. Did I enjoy it? Yes, I definitely did. I thought it was going to be a rom-com because I think this is what it was marketed at, because rom-coms, if you have noticed, are making a comeback, and using rom-coms as a marketing tool is more attractive than, for example, drama. And I'm not trying to compare the two genres in their qualities, but it's just that, for example, more people are perhaps likely to watch a rom-com than a drama, because depending on the genre, you go to the cinema with different expectations. And that's why, if you have noticed, a lot of musicals which are produced nowadays, such as The Hunger Games, the Ballad of the whatever it's called, um, or Mean Girls, movies like these, which you would want to watch, despite them being musicals, are not marketed as musicals because a lot of people don't want to watch musicals because of their prejudices and just dislike, so to say, of musicals. So that's why in trailers and in promo, there is not so much emphasis put on the musical part of musical movies, because they're trying to attract wider audiences, because situating something within a genre means situating it in a niche. And obviously, a movie with a large budget, a movie which is created to generate money, because this is what movies are created for more often than not, is going to want to appeal to the wider audiences rather than a specific niche one. And that's why trailers and just the marketing is also so fascinating to me. And so The Materialist, I was very, very excited to see it. I thought it was going to be a rom com. It wasn't. It was a dramatic romantic movie. I think, and I know you might now be saying, oh, why are you even mentioning this? Why do you feel entitled to point this out? Well, I feel entitled to point this out because if it's not white people calling out white people, then I think there's a problem. I think the movie was predominantly white. And while I recognize, they might have searched for a specific talent and these are the people who earn the roles, I can recognize this. It's just I genuinely thought that post-pandemic movie productions and TV show productions are striving to be more inclusive in their representations. So that was something that really made an impression on me. And the plot is quite predictable, I would say. The biggest plot twist for me, well, there were two, were obviously when Sophie, Lucy's client, gets assaulted at her date. I think this narrative, this plot and storyline is super important to explore because it portrays and hints, at least, at the danger of dating and what is it like to be a woman who dates. Because obviously, by me now saying the following, I'm not trying to diminish the experiences of male victims because men are also victims of sexual assault and harassment. But statistically speaking, women are more likely than men to be the victims of such crimes. And it just, I think, was nice to open up the conversation in movies about what it takes for a woman to go on a date and the risk it poses for her to be potentially harassed, potentially abused, potentially harmed in any way. And I think this is such an important topic that should be explored more. And I I recognize that this plot line was not the main plot line of the movie, hence it's not too deep of a development, but I feel like the plot line and the whole movie could have benefited from developing it a bit more, but that's just my, radical feminist opinion. Um, the movie was quite pleasant to see. I would say it was very aesthetically pleasing, the way it was shot and the colors that were used. They created this sense of comfort and harmony, which I personally really appreciated. It did make me feel sleepy though, because like I mentioned, I've been chronically sleep deprived for the past few months, especially the past few weeks, and I just had to rub my eyes and just smack myself, like tap myself on the foot or just pinch myself to stay awake at first. And it's not because the movie was boring, it was because I was exhausted, but just the way the movie was shot. Because at first there's no such rush when it comes to the scenes and the way they were shot, especially the first scene with the cave people. It's so slow, it's so comforting that I felt like falling asleep, but thankfully I didn't. And I did enjoy the movie. I genuinely enjoyed it. I I don't know if it lived up to my expectations because obviously I went in expecting a rom-comedy and it wasn't. Like the comedy in rom-comedy was not there. It was a completely different genre. But I obviously think the message that the movie is trying to send is quite clear. That at first, when I was watching it, I was thinking about the relationship between Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans's characters, and I just started thinking, those people love each other so much, and they're passionately in love with each other, but they have money problems. So I just started thinking to myself as I was watching the movie, is love enough of a justification to stay in a relationship? Is love enough sometimes, or would there be more in living together and spending your life together? Should love be the sole reason you're staying with someone? And I don't have the answer to that. I think love should be on the table, but I just think that with the way life's complexity is playing out right now, unfortunately, love may not always be as sufficient as it used to be. It's absolutely crucial, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to undermine the importance of love. It's just, I feel like nowadays there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. And yeah, it just made me rethink about what it actually takes to be committed for life. And then when Dakota Johnson's character entered her relationship with Pedro Pascal's character, I obviously the narrative was flipped, and it was about, well, what if you have everything but you don't have love? And should relationships and marriage and love, should they be transactional, or should they just be out of passion, out of devotion, out of commitment, and wanting to spend every single day of your life with that person who you think your soul is connected to? And obviously, again, I think the message of the movie is quite clear that money doesn't buy happiness, and your materialist needs can be met, and that can ease the pain, and it can make you feel valuable. It can make you feel tended to and taken care of, because whether we like to admit it or not, everybody wants to feel taken care of, even us hyper independent people. And it just positions relationships in a way to see what it takes to be in a relationship. Sure, maybe it's more complex than simply loving each other. But if you have everything but don't love each other, no matter how much, let's say, you respect yourselves, if you don't love each other, maybe it's still not going to work out. So it is about prioritizing and figuring out what actually matters for you personally in a relationship, and what is it that you're looking for. Are you looking for love, and are you willing to settle down for love? And by settle down, I don't mean, just giving up on everything else you've dreamed of, and just, oh, he checks one box, so everything is okay. Like, it's an important box, so I'll just let everything else slide because he can give me this that others might not be able to give me. And it's just about knowing yourself, who you are in a relationship, what you want from a relationship, and what you think you deserve in a relationship. And obviously, the world would be ideal if every single need we had could be met by the person we are in a partnership with. But life is more complex than that. Life is not binary, and hardships happen, and as much as we progress, sometimes we regress, and it's okay. Like, human relationships fluctuate, that is normal. But when it comes to such long term commitments, it's about figuring out your non negotiables. And for some people, a non negotiable may be that the person is able to provide for you financially. For other people, maybe finances are not that big of a concern and they're focusing more on pure emotion. And I'm not trying to say that one is more right than the other, while even though I personally believe that in a relationship, emotional closeness and devotion should be prioritized over physical and materialist needs, it would be, I feel, rather unfair and unrealistic to not recognize that those needs also need to be met. And it's okay that if you want your needs to be met by your partner, your materialist needs, it's okay. It's okay. I don't blame you. It's normal. Everybody wants to be tended to, like I mentioned. And the movie I enjoyed. I feel like it was a nice entertainment. It was a nice watch over a glass of wine or something like this type of movie. It was not too demanding that you had to be invested at all times because, I told you during the movie I was worried about my car being unlocked and stolen. So I missed a few scenes here and there worrying about this and panicking, but I still got the gist. And there is some originality to the movie. I don't think I've watched a movie about a matchmaker, and I didn't even know that matchmakers are still a thing nowadays. So that was an interesting discovery to make. What I will say though, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the content of the movie, is that the movie here in my local cinema in Bulgaria is shown only once a day. And that once a day is 5:15 p.m. And that's a really, really inconvenient time slot if you're working a 9 to 5 or if you have appointments and you have to rush to make it to the movie. I felt so weird to go to the cinema during the afternoon rather than like I normally do in the evening, if not even at night, and to leave the cinema and it still be bright outside. And I think this is also what could have contributed to my headache because I was constantly switching from light, dark, dark, light, light, dark, dark, light, and my eyes struggled to adjust, let alone my brain. But I think that if you're looking for an easygoing but still something you can take you can take something away from type of movie, you should go and watch The Materialist. I enjoyed it on a scale of from on a scale of 1 to 10. I would give it a solid 7. I think, obviously, nothing revolutionary, nothing unexpected, but still, it was quite nice to see. And while I did expect a comedy, I'm quite happy with the way the movie was written because despite not really creating a lot of nuance to the characters, some characters were somewhat well developed. And I feel like that was namely contributed because of this plot line of the harassment. And it showed women supporting each other and taking responsibility and feeling guilt. And I think this is what humanizes a character in front of you. And I think Dakota Johnson did a phenomenal job. And she's just in general an amazing actress. And yeah, guys, go and watch The Materialist. It's not going to change your life, but I feel like it's definitely going to entertain you. But with that being said, my eyes are fully closing on me. My head is pounding. My throat is super sore from speaking for so long without even having a sip of water because who would have thought that I would lose my water bottle? So I want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I very much hope to see you in the next one. But until then, stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and don't support genocide. Bye!